Bear, let's start with the big news first things first. Hugh Freeze is out at Auburn after the Auburn Tigers fall to Kentucky 10-3. We can touch on the game a little bit, Bear, but I think the stats and the score really speaks to and is a microcosm of some of the struggles of the Hugh Freeze era. He is officially out as their head coach. You've got a great segment of content dropping first thing in the morning. And Auburn Tigers coaching. Are you having fun, Bear, making the hot boards? Because it's every
I am
week.
actually. I'm actually having a lot of fun.
Hey, who's going to be next week's? Like, come on down, right? Like, just your school, your coach, very well may be next.
I've spent most of my Sunday nights before we do this live stream getting notes prepared on how I'm going to do the hot board video, and that's airing tomorrow morning. But yeah, I mean, we could just talk about the Hugh Freeze thing. It was time. I think everybody knew it. You're talking about how close you were. The reality is the only thing you were close to was out the door. There were so many things that could have gone right that never did go right, and there's really the only thing left to say is that this is what happens when you go to a school and have massive expectations, and you fail to accomplish all the things that you self-prioritize you as. The thing about Hugh Freeze that always drove me crazy was we talked about him as this offensive genius and his quarterback development and his way to be able to reinvent personnels that made it so enticing back when he was at Ole Miss and when he was at Liberty. And we're in year 3, and we're watching the exact same offense that was run when he was at Liberty be run at Auburn. And there's no adjustments. There's nothing that's changing. You didn't want to go hire an offensive play caller. You didn't want to make any adjustments at any single point. And the crazy part is every single time that it felt like that you had an opportunity to strike and the call didn't go your way, immediately you threw your hands up and just blamed the refs and kind of took on this persona of the woe is me sad sack feel. Like I remember in the Missouri game, they were talking about how it was a close call back and forth, and it was a tie game, and there was supposed to be a pass interference call, and the entire identity when Auburn didn't get that play to go its way, the drollness on the sidelines, and Hugh Freeze kind of just throwing up the hands saying, I give up. And you and I saw that when we were out in Georgia with the Georgia game, when they got the touchdown that was called back and it was a fumble, how quickly the play calling just went kaput. And the crazy part is, Chris, is that it's one thing to be able to say, well, it's year 3 and we're still building the process. Hugh, you had everything go your way. You had back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes. You had back-to-back top 15 transfer portal classes. You spent money that was in the portal to bring in the right pieces. You went and you tried to address the quarterback position. You had opportunities to go ahead and fix offensive faults. You had the personnel that people viewed as a legit threat that could go ahead and make a run. And nobody was saying you had to go to the playoff or bust, but we were saying the roster is good enough. You look at the roster composition, it's a top 15 roster in college football. And when the results continue to stockpile and stockpile and stockpile, and the only thing that we're seeing is more L's and no definitive breaks, it comes back to leadership. I mean, like, that's what this is. And unfortunately, bad leadership led to a bad roster, which led to a lot of doubt, which led to a lot of self-inflicted wounds, the inability to get the quarterback right. And lo and behold, now you go and hit and reset once again at the most important position in a year where this feels like it is so detrimental to find the right head coach. And honestly, Auburn's a great job. Auburn, in my opinion, is a top 12 job in college football. But it's like the 4th best job in this cycle, which makes it even more challenging because of the first name may not be there, the second may not be there, and you got to settle for the third name when honestly, you should have already been in this position last year when you saw the faults of this team.
And I agree with you, Bear, and we'll talk more about this, obviously, in the coming days. Certainly your hot board video, I know you're probably touched on this a ton, but it is a really good job in college football, but I think it's also one of the most difficult jobs. That's what's going to make it really interesting to see who they go get because, again, I mean, you look at your permanent opponents you got in the SEC. You got to face off against Alabama and Georgia every single year. Like that's just the reality of your existence, right? So I think it takes a certain someone who wants that challenge of playing the very best. But, I mean, Bear, just kind of overview of the Hugh Freeze era. 15-19 overall, 6-16 in conference play. You went to a bowl game once, and that was in your first season, which you lost the Music City Bowl. You might recall that game against Maryland where Hugh Freeze came out and said essentially, yeah, we didn't spend a ton of time game planning. We were recruiting. And it's like, okay, in year 1, that's fine. You can get away with that because recruiting is the lifeblood, obviously, of college sports. It's the thing that gives fan bases hope. and people have written off essentially bowl games and what they mean, although I think that was a really, really bad sign early on. But I mean, Bear, you went 6-7, 5-7, 4-5. You're on pace for your third straight losing season under Hugh Freeze. I agree with you. It was time. I mean, listen, I give Auburn – I'll say this about Auburn, and it's not meant to be a shot. I think some Auburn folks will probably take it as a shot. I do think, Bear, Auburn is a program to where I think maybe the expectations don't always match the reality. Like, I don't think Auburn should have the expectations that Alabama has on a yearly basis. Like, I think Auburn thinks they should be Alabama, and until they do more on the field, I think that's misguided. I don't think that's fair, and that's, to be able to hold the next coach or any coach to that standard. But you and I and everyone else can agree with the roster they had on that talent, they should have been far better. And I mean, again, trajectory is important. You don't get 4, 5, 6, 7 years, however long, to figure it out. This isn't like the past, right? Where you got to, let me just get my guys in there. It's going to take 3 or 4 years to get my recruiting classes. I mean, I believe it was Hugh Freeze, Bear, if I recall, and I'm paraphrasing, and somebody can correct me in the comments, maybe you can. I'm pretty sure Hugh Freeze was the one that put kind of the timetable on. I don't think he specifically said, judge me off year 3 like Brian Kelly did. But he essentially said, like, by year 3, we should have this thing rolling. Like we should be where we want to be in year 3. And like you said, it's not like it was like, hey, playoff or bust. If you don't go to the playoff, you're fired. But they weren't even remotely close. I was talking to our buddy Mike Gittins before the season, and we talked to other Auburn folks at SEC Media Days and all throughout preseason. I always said, Bear, that for this season, if you weren't at minimum in the conversation, just the conversation of the college football playoff come to turn in November of this season.
This week,
today, you had a failed season. And I mean, sitting at 4-5, 1-5 in SEC play, obviously not even close. So I will be very curious to what you said too, who they will go get. There's so many openings right now of good jobs. And like you said, this might be, where does this rank amongst the best jobs available? And I mean, you've got Florida. I'd say Florida's a better job. LSU's obviously a better job. I think it's a better job than Arkansas.
The conversation is where you go right now. That's the first one you can argue with.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, what if others open, right? What if Lane Kiffin does leave and Ole Miss opens? What if Eli Drinkwitz leaves and Mizzou opens? It's going to make it very interesting for them. But the bottom line is this, Bear, and it's the understatement of the century. Like, they just were not getting it done. And at some point that good old boy preacher, pastor, sermon vibe that Hugh gives off, like it just wears thin, Bear. It does. And I mean, you know what I tell you is this, who might be vindicated more than anyone, and might be the biggest winner in all this.
Oh, it's Peyton Thorne.
Peyton Thorne.
It's Peyton
Thorne, because he took so much of the blame, of the criticism, and he wasn't good. I'm not trying to sit here and, completely, say that everything was on Hugh and Peyton Thorne's totally innocent. But from the people I've talked to, Bear, Peyton Thorne wasn't nearly as bad as we and so many others tried to make him out to be. And I think that's the proof's in the pudding this year, where it's like, hey, you went out and you got a different quarterback, and Jackson Arnold was supposed to be the answer and be this upgrade, and he's not even remotely close. Yeah, I mean, look at this team. They might even be worse without Peyton Thorne. So it was time. There's no doubt. I'll be curious to see who Auburn goes and gets, but Bear, what a just completely failed experiment. I mean, I think the intention was solid, obviously. Like, I think the concept made sense. But can we call it for what it is, Bear? Hugh Freeze made a career out of beating Nick Saban a handful of times. I mean, what else did he do in his and I don't know if Hugh's done coaching. I don't know if he gets another head coaching job somewhere. But, like, what did Hugh Freeze really do? I mean, those 14 and 15 Ole Miss teams were good. Do not get me wrong. But outside of he built his entire career off beating Nick Saban. And that's why he got that Auburn job.
Well, he also built it off of being able to say, I work with quarterbacks and I make them better. Because of whether or not you want to admit that, Chad Kelly and then Bo Wallace and then Malik Willis and countless other names on what they were able to accomplish after college, they were good when they were in college. And I think that's ultimately where I look back and I say, this is where I have to cut ties with you. You speak of yourself as a great quarterback developer, and you handpick the quarterbacks in the portal. Like, the problem that I have whenever it comes back to the Hugh Freeze experiment of, well, let's blame Jackson Arnold. Let's go blame Peyton Thorne. Guys, he handpicked them. Like he had an opportunity to go after John Mateer, and they could have thrown a lot of money to John Mateer's way, and John Mateer would have had to consider it. They could have gone after Darian Mensah from Tulane. They could have gone after Blake Shapen. They could have gone after multiple names over the last few years to be a better fit for the system. And he said, I'm not going to spend $1 million. I'm going to stand pat and get my quarterback in Peyton Thorne. And then I'm going to go get Jackson Arnold as my next option. And it's just like, when you say that you know how to develop quarterbacks, when you say that you know how to build up roster construction and that offensive personnel is going to be great, Chris, you ranked bottom 4 in offensive metrics all 3 years that you were at Auburn. You're an offensive mastermind. That's inexcusable. And I will fight back on one thing that you said. You said that he didn't have his roster entirely yet. In today's day and age, back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes, 3 straight top 15 transfer portal classes. That's a Hugh Freeze roster by this point this year. And the roster's worse because of him. Like, that's where we're at. Thank God you got a defensive coordinator in DJ Durkin that was able to keep you in games because of it was unwatchable at times. The offensive line was terrible. The running game was obsolete. You got rid of your team captain, Damari Alston. He made it clear he didn't want to be there anymore. What does that say about the culture that you have right now? Like, everything about the Hugh Freeze experiment was a disaster from the get-go, and it continuously had another flip, another turn, another shield your eyes, children, as you go ahead and watch the car fall off the cliff. Like, that was Hugh Freeze, the experiment down there. I will say that you are Auburn. Freaking act like it. Auburn's a great program. Auburn is a program that has pride. Auburn is a program that has proven that it can win national titles. Like we talk about, an Ole Miss team with Lane Kiffin. Can they win a national title? Well, Auburn's won one before. Auburn's won an SEC championship before. Auburn's proven that they can at least get to that level of play. They've done that. So you got to make sure that you bring that identity in. I think there are 3 non-negotiables that you got to look for your next head coach. Number 1, the ability to recruit. And I mean not just recruit talent, but also great coaching staffs. Number 2, be willing to fight back on things that you demand and not just be a yes boy to everyone that goes and wants to run the program, because Auburn's very political in that standpoint. And number 3, a sense of leadership. Like, I want to know, you may end up being an offensive coordinator for all I care. But when I see you come out of the tunnel, I know that those guys are running behind you and they're ready to run through a brick wall to protect your ass. That's what I want to say. And I don't know if we will because of the hires that you make. John Summerall's the first name that comes to mind, but there's going to be a slew of other names that get mentioned for the job.
Bear, it's going to be interesting to see who Auburn goes after for their next head football coach. But the bottom line is this: Hugh Freeze is out. Oh, by the way, Bear, we didn't even mention. Yeah, you lose 10-3 to Kentucky on your home field. Yeah,
Writing's on the wall. That was it.
Yeah, that was the final nail in the coffin. Again, Bear, this game was disgusting. I don't even really want to spend a ton of time talking about it because it's more so what's happened since. That's the bigger takeaways. I wonder how Kentucky feels right now, though. Like, I saw somebody say that, like, there was this embrace after the game with Mark Stoops and their AD, and that's the look of someone that's so grateful that they don't have to spend XYZ on a buyout because he beat Auburn. I don't think that's a positive for you. Like, I still think you need to move off of Mark Stoops. Like, I hope there isn't some, like, misconception that, oh, this is the win that saves his job. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what Kentucky wants to do. Again, basketball season starts tomorrow. Maybe they're more concerned with that. But this football program, I think, still probably needs to go a different direction. Again, congratulations to the Cats. Congratulations to Kentucky for getting off the Schneid Bear. But this doesn't change anything in my mind for what Kentucky football is and what Kentucky football. And again, Kentucky's at least got some life. You know, they're obviously better than Auburn. They've got some life. They play hard for Stoops, but I don't know. I saw some of that chatter on social media, Bear, and I'd still say if you're Kentucky for the long term of your program, this was a great short-term win, short-term feeling. Everybody feels good about themselves. Yeah, for the long term, you still need to eat that buyout and go a different direction.
Kentucky is sitting currently at 3-5. They have
good call, by the way, on this pick. Really good. I give you credit. This was a hell of a pick.
I was sweating bullets. I was sweating bullets up. Now, good call for me on best bets because if that was the only one that I won because of 2 freaking late turns. But we'll talk about that later. They have 4 games closed at the year: Tennessee Tech, Florida, Vanderbilt, Louisville. If they go 3-1 in that stretch, I think that Mark Stoops will be back next year. I do not think that they're going to go 3-1 in that stretch. I think at best they will go 2-2. I just do not see it. So, do you really want to be again in a position to where you are still the laughingstock of the SEC and next season, maybe a coach that you really wanted is at another school. And because of where the program is at this point, he can't turn around fast enough. So guess what? He ends up staying at his school rather than come to you. There's just a lot of things right now to where, the Mark Stoops legacy will always be remembered in a prominent light if things go according to plan, but it's run its course. We all hit 0 on the clock at some point. That's just kind of it in Lexington for him. I wish him nothing but the best. I think that he could still coach if he wants to, but I'm making a switch at the end of the season regardless of what happens. I think you kind of have to with how many jobs are open right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Bear. I would agree. But again, congratulations to Kentucky Wildcats. First SEC win of the season, and Big Blue Nation puts the final nail into Hugh Freeze's coffin. It comes 1 week earlier than our guy Cole the Bear Thompson predicted. You were almost right, Cole. You were almost right. Now, Bobby Yaga's got a
preview though that he was going to get fired on Sunday. So right, but also not preseason right.
Now Bobby Yaga's going to have to take it out on DJ Durkin in Nashville. So
which makes me a little bit more nervous. I'm not going to lie, just a tad.
Well, there's just more unknown. There's more unknown. Again, we'll break down that game this week. Talk about it. It's going to be a lot of fun.